participate on the chat or unmute yourself and participate as we go through the presentation. Once again, my name is Nayes Divadillo. Welcome again, and we will start our presentation. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the agenda for today that we have going on. So today we have a very exciting agenda. So we have, or welcome, we have an icebreaker. We'll be going over the definition. So we'll be discussing the current definition and some of the new proposed definitions that we have based on your feedback. We'll have you go through breakout rooms to discuss such definition. Then we'll be talking about the drafting and the dissemination of the framework, the toolkit, and the definition as well. So we'll be having you going and joining another breakout room so we can, have those conversations and then talk and discuss the following and the next steps. So that would be our agenda for today. On the chat, you would be able to find the English and the Spanish participant agenda as well. We'll go over our next slide, please. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to invite my colleague, Annabelle Sanchez, to do our icebreaker.
Hello, everyone. It's nice to see you today and to be here. And thank you for making the time to be with us today and provide some input as to our initiatives for today that you saw on the agenda. We're going to do a little exercise, an icebreaker to get us started today. And while thinking about this, I was thinking about what we are intending to do or who we're intending to make better. And I thought about the community. So I'd like for us to please remember you can use the chat or you can even unmute if you'd like to as you respond to the following question. What are qualities that make a good community? You may need some time to think about it, so I'll give you a few minutes and please feel free to post in the chat. And as I mentioned, or you could unmute to let us know your responses. Oh, I see Karen responded. Respect and value others. And Rosa mentioned equitable resources that would help support them. Karen mentioned communication. Openness, transparency. Annie mentioned openness, transparency, positive intention, respect, trust, two-way communication, and listening for understanding. Very nice. And Anna mentioned to pass the resources that, oh, one second, that are given to them. Oh, I see what happened. She's asking for the PowerPoint. Okay. And then to help each other mutually. Very good. Anna mentioned that. I know some of you guys are still thinking about it, and that's okay. Jamel mentioned culturally relevant resources, support, and opportunities to advance and thrive. I see resources come up quite a bit in your responses, and that's awesome because that's what we are working on, updating those resources and making them equitable for everyone. Value others even if you disagree. Very good. And I also love how you guys are liking by showing hearts or thumbs up, if you agree with what someone else posted. That's also a great way for us to use chat to interact. Anyone else before we move on? You can unmute to let me know you're working on it. While being fair. I just noticed community communication. I know a lot of you also mentioned communication. Very similar words. I'm sure it is for a reason. Empathy. Very nice. We're working with some great people, some great insights in here. I can tell by your responses. Okay, so I will hand it over to Nayesi for our next slide. Please feel free to continue adding if you feel you need to add anything else.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Annabelle. So yes, what makes a community, it's so multifaceted and so many values and resources and just support that we need. So back in January, when we started these meetings, we looked at, and as we know, just to kind of refresh our memories, the goal is to update the Nevada Birth through 12 Family Engagement Framework from an early childhood perspective, and of course, see any other age bands. Within that, that means that we were looking at updating the definition, the framework itself, and the toolkit. So during our January meeting, which was the first meeting, we did have a vast and very rich conversation about the definition and our current definition and what does that look like. And we got all of your feedback, and we were able to look at what do you think about the definition? How does that look like? So some of the findings that we found was that the definition, the word accessibility and equitable access, it seemed that in the definition, making sure that access and equity was very highly emphasized. We also looked at that the definition was a little too long, so we were looking at making it short, more condensed, keep the information straight and to the point. Something that we found out was that when it came to the definition, which is the current definition, if maybe Megan, if we go to the Padlet so they can see the current definition, the word share responsibility on the current definition was something that a lot of the advisory committee members and attendees in this presentation brought up, was that they didn't like the word share responsibility per se, for the fact that it sounded more like something was imposed rather than having a collaboration, a joint partnership, a partnership. So share responsibility seemed to have gotten a lot of feedback about not wanting to have those specific two words on the definition, for the fact that that kind of meant more like imposed rather than collaboration. So some of the words that they like was joint partnership, share collaboration, share partnership. They also brought up throughout the definition the importance that the parents are the ones that know their children the best, that they're the first teachers. So throughout the conversations that we had with many of you, it was very evident that we all agree that the parents, the families are the individuals that know their children the best. So that they also wanted to see kind of that same thought reflected on the definition. And then they also looked at, once again, making emphasis on the equitable, the shared partnerships, the value of the families when it comes to that breadth of knowledge, and then everybody working together for the well-being of the children. So the current definition says that family engagement is a shared responsibility between families and communities where all receive equitable access to tools and supports needed to successfully work together toward the development of children and youth for college, career, and lifelong learning. So that's the current definition. Based on the feedback that we just went through it, they wanted to change a few of those components. And we looked at your feedback, we looked at the current definition, and we were able, the Nevada Department of Education team was able to come together and propose or create or come up with 3 definitions based on your feedback. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go over the definitions. I'm going to review it. And today, what we're going to need you to do, or what we would request from you, will be to look at the definitions and really see if you like any of them, if you would like to change anything. And then, of course, any updates and or modifications would be highly important, because last time when we met, we talked about the definition, but we didn't conclude the next step, which is all of us coming together, updating the definition when it comes to maybe having 3 versions, 2 versions. Right now we have 3 versions. We can even come up with more versions, or we can have only 2 versions, and then present that to the general public in itself to get more feedback, and then solidify our updated Nevada family engagement definition. So the first definition that we came up with, so maybe Jamie, it's kind of little. Do you mind maybe making it a little bit bigger? So the participants can see it a little bit better. Perfect. So the first definition we have is family engagement is a joint partnership involving families, communities, and schools, ensuring equitable access to necessary resources for successful collaboration in children's development, for education, and lifelong learning. So that's the first version of the definition. The second version we have is family engagement is a partnership between schools, families, and support systems, recognizing families as children's first teachers. It fosters a welcoming environment and a sense of belonging for all, working together to develop children and youth for college, career, and lifelong learning. The third option that we have is family engagement recognizes families as their children's first teachers and creates a partnership where schools, communities, and families have equitable access to the necessary tools and supports to collaboratively develop children and youth for college, career, and lifelong learning. So as you can see, we have our current definition. We took all of your feedback and input, and we came up with 3 versions of the definition. So what we would like to do now is we would like now to ask for your feedback, and we want to know what do you like about it, what would you like to change, and these 3 samples, that's just based on the input. We can always change it, and we can always modify. So Megan, if we go back to the presentation, please. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna put you into some breakout rooms, and what we're gonna do is we're going to have you look at the current definition, the 3 proposed definitions versions, and then we're gonna have you go through it and see how does the definition affect your role. Does it have an impact in your role? And what I'm saying is like each of those 3 sample definitions. So you're gonna evaluate each of those 3 definitions. And then we would like to hear from you. What do you like about the definition? What don't you like about the definition and you would like to change? And we would also like you to draft or modify and just come up with one definition if you want to in your group. You can look at the three and then you come up with your own, or you can look at one and just pick and choose and answer those questions. And this one, it's mostly, we just mostly want to hear your perspectives. We want to hear your input and your suggestions, because once we come up with one or three or four sample definitions, then we'll once again send it to the general public so we can get more feedback and we can finally have our updated Nevada family engagement definition. So what we're going to do now is we're going to put you into breakout rooms. Each of you is going to choose group 1, 2, or 3. Group 3 is going to be bilingual, so if you speak English and another language, please feel free to go into that room. And you're going to have a conversation with your team, with your group, and you're going to answer those questions about each of the 3 proposed definitions. And then once you go through those conversations, you're going to choose a spokesperson. And then you're also going to choose someone to take notes. So each of you, once you go to your respective groups, on the chat, you're going to click on the link of each of the groups, and you're going to click on that link, and then it's going to take you to a Google Slide where you're going to be able to record your responses. So Megan, if you open, please, one of the Google Slides so they can see how that looks like. Just a second. Perfect. So if you go over here, this would be for group 1. So if you go to the first slide, Megan, please. So the first slide has all of the instructions. It has the questions once again. So if you have any questions, you can come back to the instructions. And then this, the second slide, go back to the second slide. This is where you're going to record your notes. Once again, you have the questions right there. You have the definition notes. So during the January meeting, we came up with a bunch of notes. We analyzed everything and we put it together. So if you click on that link, it would take you to the definition notes. So the notes more in depth, and then you can review them if you need to. You would also find the updated, the current definition. You will find that right there. Do you mind going, Megan, to the title and click on the definition? Right there. So right there, you can find the current definition for Nevada family engagement. So right there, you can see the definition. And then we're going to place on the chat the Padlet. So you can see the 3 proposed definitions. You can see the, and you can also see the current definition there. In case, so you can reference to it, you can review it, and then you can go to your Google Slide and record your notes. If you have any questions, you can let us know. You can send me a chat that needs Spanish interpretation to please select the Spanish interpretation option again. When we come back from breakout rooms, it automatically makes you rejoin. I mean, you have to select and join again. Les voy a recordar a todos los participantes, las participantes, que por favor vuelvan a seleccionar la sala de interpretación al español. Una vez que regresemos de nuestras salas de grupo, ustedes tienen que volver a seleccionar y a elegir la sala en español. Así que, por favor, si necesita interpretación al español, por favor, seleccione ahora. Thank you so much, everybody. So it looks like everybody had a vast conversation, and it looks like everybody was very excited to give their feedback. So let's share out. And if we didn't have enough time, this is the time we can spend it as a whole group. It's quite a small group today, so we can actually have that interactive conversation. So let's start with group number 1. Group number 1, whoever is the spokesperson, please go ahead and share. We are more than looking forward to hear all about it.
Sure. I was in group number 1, and we were able to review all 3 definitions and point out parts of the definitions that we thought would be super important to include in a final definition. but we did not get to craft in a sample definition with the combination. But I'll just share some key points on what we came up with. As I'm sure you probably all maybe have some commonalities there. The first one, we really decided that 2 and 3 really encompass the areas that we thought would be important for a final one. One of the things that was pointed out is that we like the idea of the partnership and really spelling out what that means between schools, families, and communities. Really being more specific about what that support system looks like. So instead of support system, maybe communities. We enjoyed the part about incorporating equity that's included in definition 3. And we were able to come together and talk about how number 2 really does have an aspect of looking at what the outcome will be with the college and career and lifelong learning piece that might be important when we're talking about it to like our lawmakers to see the connection of a continuum for K through 12. Because sometimes early learning gets lost in translation. And then another aspect that we really wanted to keep was really amplifying parents as their child's first teacher. And so that was something that was shared in our group. And please feel free, anybody, to jump in and if I left anything out. But those were the major points that we were able to come up with that we thought would be important for a final definition.
Perfect. Well, that sounds like it was very productive. So it sounds like definitions 1 and 3, equitable access, the group discussed phrases. Okay. So it looks like maybe 2 and 3, by the sounds of it, it sounds like your group like 2 and 3.
Yep.
And it sounds like the child's first teacher is something that is very much it's transparent and it's very much represented in 2 and 3. Okay, perfect. Great. Thank you so much, Jamel, for sharing out. We're going to go to group number 3. And I'm going to have, I think, Annabelle, did you choose a spokesperson or are you the spokesperson?
I can share. It was, we had some discussion and we ended up just asking our team the questions. Let me, can't seem to find it. 1 second. Okay, there we go. It was in a different tab. Okay, so some of the feedback we got from our bilingual group is they really liked their definition. They liked how it was more detailed. But what they really loved is that it shows more than the other 2 that it gave importance to the families. It was suggested towards the end that to select or consider words such as relationships or union to be able to include in the definition rather than what we had earlier that didn't seem to agree with everyone back in January. So, or the shared responsibilities, maybe using relationships or union was suggested.
Perfect. Thank you.
Did we have a breakout group number 2?
No, we didn't.
Okay.
Perfect. So it sounds like number 2 and 3 are the ones that are more centered and displaying the importance of each given audience and the language that we want to display when it comes to the definition. So we're gonna, now that we share, so it looks like we have 2 definitions. Looks like we have to change, you know, at this point, it sounds like we have the skeleton, but now it's more like the wording selection. Like number 3 stated, you know, we, in the original one for number 3, in the proposed, we said partnership, but then they had this very great conversation about, well, can it be a union? Can it be a relationship? You know, because it's more than just partnering. It's going above and beyond to really support that children's development, that, you know, that eventually they're going to come into young learners. So with that being said, if we go back to the PowerPoint, what we're gonna do is have the next conversation is, now we know that we have two possible definitions. We talked about what we like and what we would like to change. So we'll take that back and then we'll update you with the definition and everything else. So now that we have worked as an advisory committee and we have now two definitions and we have reviewed them, now the question is the dissemination. So we have worked as a committee to update these. We have heard your opinions, but we would also like to make sure that those voices that are not at the table, they get a choice or at least an opportunity to be at the table. So the next question that I would like to pose to the advisory committee is, how would we disseminate the definition? Like, who should we be sending it out to kind of update this definition for their input? So something that we were talking for the Nevada Department of Education was, okay, so we have the definitions. What organizations or who can we send it out to so they can also give their input and their feedback, so then we can actually update and finalize the updated definition. So a little bit of background: the last time when the definition was created, it was sent to a plethora of organizations and individuals, and it was a survey where the definitions, at that time there were 3 of them, were displayed, and they were asked to vote on their favorite definition, and that's how they were able to choose a final definition. So the question that I bring to the advisory committee is, should we use the same approach? We still need to get it out to as many individuals as possible. Should we use the same approach where we, as an advisory committee, solidify the two versions with your given input and your given feedback of today? We'll update those 2 definitions and we'll send it to you. And then once we say, yeah, we have the final draft, quote unquote, of the 2 definitions, and then do we just send it out to the individuals and have them vote which ones of the 2 versions they like? So this is where we're in the crossroads of, we have our 2 potential definitions for update. And then we want to get more feedback and more input from different other individuals besides the advisory committee. So I would like to hear from you. You can put on the chat any ideas. We would also follow up with you on the recap email, but I would really like to, for everybody to start thinking, can you like if you have a group, like a specific group, would you like your group to participate in it? And that group to kind of fill out a survey or a form saying which one of the definition and providing their feedback. And then we would come up with the list too. So if you have any input, just let us know. Okay, so as you think about it, please make sure you feel free to add it on the chat. Next slide, please. So with that being said, so we have 2 potential samples of the definition. We want to start this sending and disseminating these 2 samples of the definition to as many individuals as possible. So we're gonna work on that and we'll update you. The next question is the framework usability and impacts of dissemination. So I'm going to invite Annabelle for her to give us a little bit of an update when it comes to the draft of the framework.
Yes, thank you, Nayes. We didn't include it in this presentation, but I know we've included it in others. Our roadmap and where we're at for this month. And I wanted to give you an update about that. We are in the process of drafting a section of the framework, not the whole thing yet. We prefer to show you a section. We are working with someone here at the department, and seeing if she's able to do the language drafting for that, basically the written part of that. And from there, we are obviously gonna do the updates, bring it back to you, and get your feedback before we finalize everything. So just know that in the future, probably this month, you are going to get a survey, and based on your input that you provided in January, in the meeting back in January, we would like to know how involved do you want to be with the drafting part of the framework? For example, are you good at drafting yourself and you'd like to provide some assistance with it? Are you good at researching? Are you good at reviewing? Maybe you like editing. And that way we can consider you for when we reach those sections in the framework draft. But once everything is finalized, that's where this slide really comes into play. So we are thinking of, first of all, let's consider how we're going to use this framework. And second of all, how it's going to be spread out throughout actually for public viewing, so for everyone. We have some possible considerations. Should we add it that's why you see all these or most of these in question form. Should we use it as an interactive PDF? What should we include on the website along with it? Or should we include it in a particular website? We do have that family engagement section on the NDE website, just so you know, where the old framework has been added to that section. How do we want it to be used by different entities? How would you like to use it once it's completed for your own personal role? And how are we going to be able to keep all the resources in a formatted language, English/Spanish? So what we noticed is a lot from our bilingual group feedback, we have a lot of resources. Unfortunately, most of them are in English. So how do we combat that language barrier for our Spanish speakers? Oh, and the next one's barriers. We also noticed that there were a lot of links that were expired. So any suggestions that you have on how we can assure that the links are up to date? I know you've mentioned some ideas in the past. Maybe make sure it gets reviewed every month, so on and so forth, or every few months. That could be a possibility. And any information you'd like us to know that has not been included here, you're welcome to do so. And yes, for that, we're gonna have another breakout room and invite you to voice those opinions. And within that breakout rooms, I believe Nayesti, it'll still be, they can go to the same ones as before, right?
Yes, just go ahead and join the same breakout room. So thank you so much, Annabelle. I think on the chat, we would be placing the breakout rooms links on the chat. And once again, this meeting is more about the crossroads. We have the definition going on. We have a lot of your input and feedback when it comes about the framework and especially the toolkit. But throughout the meetings, we have noticed that we haven't addressed the actual question, because we have been talking about like the content, the resources, what to include, how to include it. But I feel like every single time that we meet, the question comes up as, okay, but how is this going to be displayed, disseminated? How is this going to be presented? Some of the questions that we have gotten is, if is this going to be printed? And if this is going to be printed, how are we gonna kind of work around with the links, videos, or is this going to be an interactive website? So I think that this is the time mostly that we want to hear from every single one of you. And we also want to maybe have outside the box thinkers as of how can we multifaceted and how can we cater to our audiences? Because when we're talking about family engagement, you also have to keep in mind about those audiences and how they best receive information. So when we're talking about the framework is, are we going to have it printed? Are we going to have an interactive PDF, a website? And I think this is when we would love to hear from you. What barriers do you think we're seeing coming up, or what organizations do you think could benefit from specific formats and or audiences? So yes, sorry, Annabelle, I interjected.
No, I appreciate you adding more to it. All right, with that in mind, let's get started with the breakout rooms. Hello. Does it seem like everyone's back? Take a look.
Yeah, I think everyone is back.
We're good? Okay, thank
Yes.
you. Okay, so we are going to go ahead and share. Did we want to tell them to go back in the Spanish translation?
Oh, yes. Hi, everyone. If you need to access the Spanish channel, please choose the Spanish channel. Hola a todas. Si necesitan interpretación al español, por favor, vuelvan a escoger la interpretación al español. Como ya saben, una vez que volvemos de las salas de grupales, tienen que volver a seleccionar la sala en español. We're ready.
Okay, thank you. And we're gonna start with breakout group number 1. Did you have a representative for your notes?
Yeah. So we talked about, one of our questions was, is it going to live just on the NDE website, or would it potentially have its own website? And if it potentially had its own website, would it allow us to be able to kind of collect some data on who's actually accessing the information, so that you could be like, I'm a parent, or I'm a teacher, I'm a, I don't know, a doctor or whatever. So we could collect some data to see who's actually utilizing the framework. Of course, we want as many entities accessing the framework as possible. One of the big barriers we talked about was just the manpower and the time that it takes to complete these things and to keep everything up to date. There's a lot of, with the concept of the links expiring, and it seems it had been noted that those were some of the outside agencies or outside resources. How do we do that efficiently? As well as the time and energy to make sure that we really are getting that balanced format between English and Spanish, or any other of the primary other languages here in the state of Nevada. So I think those are kind of the big topics that we talked about in our group. If anybody in my group wants to add anything, feel free, but those were kind of the conversations that we had had.
Very good, thank you. I know definitely once we have our finalized version of the framework, we, right now, the parental involvement and family engagement information is all in one page linked to the main website. However, I'm not sure if it's also part of the early childhood office, which Nayesti is part of, if the framework has even been included there. So at least in 2 places within our website, it can be found. But I love the idea of not just at NDE, how can we work with our other organizations so that they can promote it? So I am coming to some meetings, some coalition meetings with other organizations, such as the library, the Public Ed Foundation, and hopefully when we have this final version, they can link it somehow to their website as well. Thank you. I appreciate your input. And we didn't have a breakout room number 2, right? Just checking. Okay. Nayesti, I believe you were going to share for the next one.
Yes, perfect. So we were looking more at like I like how the other group was looking more at like the big picture. So we were looking more at the specifics when it came to the audiences. So in our group, we had quite a bit of parents. So we were talking about like what works best. So we were able to see that they like the information to be concise, not use big words, but rather easy words to digest, and use more like a flyer format where you have the QR code if individuals have more, they want to find more out the information. But we were literally talking about like the places. So first, looking at the places and the audiences that we want to target. So understand that every audience is going to congregate and have different needs. We also need to be very intentional as to how do we captivate each of those audiences attention. So for example, we were talking about families and we were talking about having champions per se of each of those sections of the framework. So right now we're looking at sectioning the framework by families, teachers, community organizations, leadership, and administrators, and really having those champions and blending in what we have with lived experiences, but having those individuals kind of championing and taking that information to their respective communities and or organizations. For example, we were talking about testimonials, and we were talking about like being a teacher. We're going to present the information different to a teacher that we would present the information to families. So we center ourselves mainly on the audience, the spaces where they congregate, and the way they like to receive information. So that's what we talked about.
Thank you, Nayes. Yes, we had a lot of discussions and really great ideas, in my opinion, that came to mind. Some were ideas that we all knew, but it wasn't until someone shared that we realized, oh, that's what it was like. The idea of the flyers, and for me, to add the infographic, it kind of sounded just like it fit in perfectly. Thank you. With that in mind, I believe there was the that the announcement, but I already
Yes.
mentioned it. So the evaluation survey, ISD, go ahead.
Perfect. Yeah. So once again, we want to hear from you. Make sure you fill out the evaluation. This is very important because it keeps us on our toes and improving. You can scan the QR code, or you can also access the link through the chat. It has been placed on the chat. We're gonna go to the next one while you fill out your evaluation. This is just mostly information, so you don't have to do anything. But the next thing that we have is we have been talking a lot in the family engagement framework about including every single individual audience since the beginning. And hopefully you have been able to see that through this meeting. We really care about your input, and we really care about everyone, that everyone's voice is at the table, but it's also heard. With that being said, the Preschool Development Grant, PDGB5, is currently embarking in a new initiative, and it's incentives for families and early childhood workforce. So PDGB5 has funds to fund any engagement from labor force and or families. And these meetings, that ones you're attending right now, they do qualify for incentives and mainly for families. So if you're a family and you haven't received your incentive, please know that we're working on it, and you will be receiving your incentives retroactively. So you will be getting paid soon. And when I say paid, is more like compensated, because we won't never be able to pay for all of your skills and your time. But we want to now open these to the professionals, the families, anyone, because we came up with a system for incentives. We're using a incentive scale from one state, and we're looking at starting this process. So we're calling everybody who wants to come and give us their input about incentives. We're looking at deciding a scale for the state of Nevada when it comes to incentives for families and incentives for professionals. And based on their engagement, you would individuals would get incentivized based on engagement. For example, if you are leading, you should be getting paid $100 plus other things for leading a workshop, for example, if you're a family. If you are providing your feedback, like you have, or collaborating, providing feedback and collaborating are two different things. So we'll be talking about everything else. We have English and Spanish informational sessions. This is a session open to anyone who wants to come give their input and their feedback about incentives and how much families and workforce should get incentivized based on the skills that they're bringing to the table. Feel free to sign in with the QR code, or the link has been placed on the chat. So thank you so much, and I hope I see you there, because this is going to be really important, because we're going to have some money to incentivize engagement. Next slide, please. With that being said, as you know, we like to be planners, and we're planning already for our September meeting. So please fill out the doodle poll so we can schedule our September meeting, and we can give you ample time to schedule or make the scheduling arrangements so you can come to our September meeting. Next slide, please. Perfect. Once again, this is my contact information, and this is Annabelle's contact information. If you have any questions, let us know. We'll stay after 1 p.m. in case you have questions, especially if you have questions about incentives, let us know. With that, we are officially done with our meeting.